I've been watching some fascinating videos today, and I'm gonna try and link them in the description for you. But it's all about our cerebrospinal fluid that circulates through our spinal column into our brain and back around, which also the science of the Kundalini is based on. And you're going to have to watch that video to make the connection to what I'm saying here, but it's all so interconnected. The magnificence of our bodies. And then to take the reference of the Bible that says, "Know you not that your bodies are the temple of God?" So yes, we think of ourselves as the container for God's Spirit. But we need to ask ourselves the question, what am I? Who am I and what am I? On one level of awareness, we identify as our body, as the outer shell. We identify as the container for God, but we don't make the connection to God, that actually the contents, aka God, is also us. But in our mind, we separate it out. We identify as the container and the content as something separate or different from us. So when it says, "Know you not that your body is the temple or house of God," that which houses God, it's only natural then to ask the question, well, what am I? Like I alluded to a moment ago, what am I? And I invite you to meditate on that for a little bit. Are you, what part of your body are you? Or are you everything, including its contents? When you watch the video about the cerebral spinal fluid, which is the living waters that seem to give us our consciousness. And as I'm putting it together now, the waters, the living waters, or what we call Spirit of God, in another way, the breath, but the waters are also the breathless consciousness of God. That consciousness, that fluid, those waters, is what gives us our inspiration. And the spirit and the inspiration is in those waters. Long before it reaches our mind. And this is how I made the connection to God hears our prayers before we speak them. He knows before we utter a word. It's because God, in our cerebral spinal fluid, the consciousness of the fluid creates the consciousness that then moves up to our brain, where we are then moved to verbalize it. But our spinal fluid, the consciousness was already held in the fluid before it got to our brain, that then kicked in the function of verbalizing it as a word. That's how God knows our thoughts before we speak them, because the consciousness is in the spinal fluid. It is all one. The only place where separation is created between ourselves and God is in our mind. And the mind is the last aspect. The mental faculty is the last aspect that recognizes conscious awareness. And when the brain has the aha moment, it thinks, now a thing comes into being, but the consciousness has been in us long before it reaches the brain, which then gives it the function of verbalizing it, expressing it as a thing. But anyways, I just wanted to share these vague thoughts about how it all came together for me, and I hope when you watch the video you will be as fascinated by it as I was. And it will hopefully make sense how a person can then arrive at the conclusion that be still and realize I am God. Right? Unless you identify merely as the container, which part of our body are you identifying as? Or are you identifying as the whole thing, including the contents, which is God?